And we're up and running, and it is a beautiful autumnal sort of day here in the Midwest. We've got chilly mornings and a little bit of frost on the windshield of the car and that sort of thing. Stephen, you on the West Coast probably don't even know what frost is in that region that you're in.
We get a little bit of snow and frost when it gets into the January, maybe even next month. We'll see some snow, some winter show up on the mountain here. So it is a little bit different here than it is, on the coast in San Diego.
Right. Well, when I lived in the Bay Area, Mount Diablo used to get a little, snow cap for 3 or 4 days every once in a while during the winter months. But that West Coast, it definitely has that insulation barrier against the severity of winter that we get here in the Chicago region.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just today, this morning, we woke up to it raining, and I was supposed to be scheduled for work, but it got rescheduled for tomorrow. So we're still able to do our hangout at the normal time, which I'm grateful for.
Absolutely. And I will mention that right after the hangout here, we will adieu, and then I'll be jumping right into an interview with Carrie Turicott. So check that out, and I'm sure that interview will be in the archives with Ulm Times Magazine. So if you want to hear more of my babble, that's something that will be available.
That's very cool. I feel like I'll go ahead and find that link and share it on my timeline too, so people can watch.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, we're starting out this cycle with actually one of my favorite parts of the lessons when we go back and look at this from a variety of different angles and look at it during the process of evolution with the lessons. Because when you start out with lesson number 1 and then you finally hit lesson number 106, which is where we're at right now, through a transformation. You may have heard these words before in the lessons, but the reality is that as you grow, as you start to shed your resistance to the ideas that the Course is presenting to you, all of a sudden you're hearing these things more in depth. You're hearing these things from a whole different level. So as we're looking at lesson 106, we're exploring that realm of stillness, getting back to a state of silence. Do you want to take this one, Stephen?
Yeah, sure thing. So lesson 106 says, "Let me be still and listen to the truth. If you will lay aside the ego's voice, however loudly it may seem to call, if you will not accept its petty gifts which give you nothing that you really want, if you will listen with an open mind, which has not told you what salvation is, then you will hear the mighty voice of truth, quiet in power, strong in stillness, and completely certain in its messages." Yeah, so right in the first prerequisite seems to be for this is to lay aside the ego's voice. And I think that there's a line even in the Course where it talks about how the ego is always the first one to speak, and it speaks the most loudly. And so we need to, let ourselves sift through that voice and come into a state of stillness.
That's very true. And one of the things that happens is that we are bombarded by input. And all of the input that comes from the material world, all of the sounds of chaos and all of the noises that we are perceiving are that constant bombardment, that assault that the ego has to keep us distracted. So it then becomes a major task in many, many ways for us to be able to step out of that constant putting our attention on riots and shootings and all of the other appearances of a world that is apart from God. And we have to recognize that getting back to God is a journey that causes us to have to filter this stuff out, to look at it and place love in that space where there was fear, anger, and hatred. So it really is a reclaiming of our inner peace. And if we use that process of affirming that the inner peace is there within us, then we fortify it, then we start to actually build it and explore it in a whole different format.
Yeah, and then what I've noticed is that, you know, through practicing these lessons and getting more in touch with that inner peace, that when that's reinstilled in us, there's a sense of groundedness or centeredness within that, and not feeling like I'm getting like an image of like a whole lot of files that we might keep in our file cabinet, and it might be all like chaotic and we don't know where to find something we're looking for. Well, when you've accessed that inner peace enough and you know where it is, and you don't have to scramble so much to go and find it again, you know, because it's something like it takes practice to keep on practicing that and keep accessing it in order to really remember it.
Yes, that really is the doing the work. You know, the first time I heard that term, doing the work, was with the Gurdjieff Society that has been around for over 100 years now. And Gurdjieff referred to our spiritual practice, our disciplines, as doing the work. And then I think Byron Katie picked that up and a few others. But that really is the core of what we are doing here, is we're doing our work in dispelling the illusion of the chaos and madness that appears to be going on around us. And it's nice to contemplate this next paragraph, because it says, listen and hear your Father speak to you through his appointed voice, which silences the thunder of the meaningless and shows the way to peace to those who cannot see. Be still today and listen to the truth. So, you know, we're being reined in and drawn back from jumping into what the media is trying to convince us is reality. So it goes on to say, be not deceived by voices of the dead, which tell you they have found the source of life and offer it to you for your belief. Attend them not, but listen to the truth. So that gives us a very easy agenda. And that, again, is a big part of the course. It's very simple. This is not difficult stuff. But the thing that we desire, that we seek, is the complexity of the ego's agenda. And that's where we get ourselves in trouble.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And some of the exercise statements go on to say later on in the lesson, I will be still and listen to the truth. What does it mean to give and to receive? And it says, ask and expect an answer. Your request is one whose answer has been waiting long to be received by you.
And that's the tipping point, is to be able to be silent enough to hear the answer. And the answer isn't going to appear so much as, you know, a trumpet from the heavens. It's going to more likely appear as a sense of being uplifted and a sense of having an idea or a vision planted in your mind, rather than, you know, some individual showing up like a minister thumping his Bible. Because as we move deeper into the course, we definitely start to step away from that bumping and proclaiming that that religion presents to us.
Absolutely. And the next lines in this lesson say, let me be still and listen to the truth. I am the messenger of God today. My voice is his to give what I receive.
So it's not just about us. It's about us becoming font. We are like the fountain, and this deep wellspring within us starts to come up, and it splashes over to bring relief into the lives of those around us.
That's an exact visual I was actually receiving last night, too, of the fountain of love pouring out in every direction.
That's nice.
So, do you want to continue with 107?
Yes, this is another good one because, again, it gives us that recognition that we don't need to put a lot of effort into this process. Lesson 107, truth will correct all errors in my mind. What can correct illusions but the truth? And what are errors but illusions that remain unrecognized for what they are? Where truth is entered, errors disappear. They merely vanish, leaving not a trace by which to be remembered. They are gone because without belief, they have no life. Now that is a very, very transformative thought when you really stop and embrace it. Basically, that process of non-resistance is the stepping stone to getting to that place of being at peace, and then having that depth of peace placed into your mind. And once that occurs, then the world around you has less and less power to disrupt you.
Yeah, totally. And that, in regards to this lesson, talking about correcting all errors in my mind, what comes to mind to me is what the Course continually repeats, that there's really only one error, and that's the thought of separations, the ego mind, or the death wish.
Yes.
So it's really just correcting that one error.
Yeah, and I think probably, the whole idea of a death wish was not really what created this. I think that was the absolute, unescapable recognition once we started down this road that could be the only outcome of any separation. And, you go back and you look at the New Testament, we're told by Jesus and a multitude of other prophets throughout history that God is life itself. So stepping out of God would essentially render you dead. And since that is an impossible thing, since God will always retain us in his perfect memory, then we create this bubble of illusion where we try to perform that act of death over and over again.
So it's really not us who are stepping out of God, but our own imagination having that ability to step outside of God. It's just an imaginary pursuit into death.
Exactly. That is absolutely the core of the whole illusion, is that we had that momentary thought of being separate. And because we were created in the image and likeness of God, we have the power to create an illusion within the mind that has become the craziness that we're surrounded by.
And so much of the salvation seems like we're just giving that power back to God, just saying, really, like, I know not what I'm doing with this power. I'm going to restore it back to the Creator.
Exactly. And being at peace with that, because the ego is always going to resist that. So, as we recognize the nothingness of the ego, it becomes a very easy journey. But initially it does create a lot of inner conflict. It does create stress in trying to detach ourselves from that personal identity.
Mm-hmm. And there's this line farther in the lesson also that says, "His confidence is with you, as you say. Truth will correct all errors in my mind, and I will rest in him who is myself."
And that, that kind of affirms, that process, that stillness presents to us. But there's also an element of recognition that none of this is real. And so it says, can you imagine what a state of mind without illusions is, how it would feel? Try to remember, that key word, remember, when there was a time, perhaps a minute, maybe even less, when nothing came to interrupt your peace, when you were certain you were loved and safe. So really, that's, loops into that idea that none of this is anything but the memory of an illusion that we're still bouncing around like a basketball and making ourselves crazy with.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny what comes to mind when I think about the whole origin of the illusion and the imagination that we could step outside of God. Because I start to think of like a child who is rebelling against their parent, right? And their parent just wants to love them, just wants what's best for them. But the difference with God is that he is actually a source of unconditional love. He doesn't have the seeming flaws that humans might have. He doesn't have the commandments that humans have. He's just pure love. And it's sort of like, as a child, we, whenever we believe in the illusion, we're rejecting that. We're trying to rebel against that pure love.
Very true. Well, now we're down to lesson 108. You want to take that and run with it?
Sure. So 108 says, "To give and to receive are one in truth. Vision depends upon today's idea. The light is in it, for it reconciles all seeming opposites. And what is light except the resolution, born of peace, of all your conflicts and mistaken thoughts into one concept which is wholly true? Even that one will disappear because the thought behind it will appear instead, to take its place. And now we are at peace forever, for the dream is over now." So I'm kind of curious, and I'm going to bring this up to discussion. And I love how there's a distinguished capitalization with the word thought towards the end of this paragraph. And they're talking about thought in terms of what God created, like a thought as more of a state of being instead of a thought as in something that your ego might think up. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that's certainly true. I think it pushes us to look at power to create things that are apart from, or seemingly apart from, our place of peace in the kingdom of God. Capital thought is a thought of God. And when we start working with our affirmations, one of my favorite lines from the Course is, "The only thoughts that I will have are thoughts that I share with God." So when we step back into that thought of peace, harmony, serenity, ecstasy, extension, that's another big part of the process, because God is a creator. So being in God's image and likeness, we are also creators, and our creation is an extension of a loving self. All of those things come under one of two different levels of the idea behind thought. There is the higher thought of God, and then there are the trivial thoughts of the mortal mind that creates all of the illusions of separation and the illusions of there being a multitude of people here, when in fact there's really only one of us.
Yeah, and I mean, to continue on with the lesson, to give and to receive are one in truth. I mean, I wonder, if we ever have that thought of that I'm not getting what I want, that life isn't handing to me what I really want to receive. This lesson, I feel, is a great reminder, because it's saying, well, only you really have what you want within you, and you can only receive it by giving it. So it really redirects us back to our own power and how we already have everything we want.
Yes. What we've created are pursuits that mask that realization. Oh, I need a car, I needed this, I needed that. So we have a multitude of thoughts that create pursuit because we believe that we do not have it. If you are in a state of self-realization, if you're actually getting closer to that realization of oneness with God, you will have everything that you need in the moment. It will manifest in, whatever avenue is necessary or available. So a lot of people get trapped in that idea of, oh, I'm going to manifest my rent money for next week. If you will just calm down, come to center, and come back to that one thought, which is that God gave me everything. God gave me all the things that I could possibly need or desire by giving me himself or itself. Then we start to disassemble all those ideas of lack and need. So, and of course, then we also can extend that to those around us by recognizing that all of our thoughts are shared thoughts. So if you're putting out a lot of scary, crazy thoughts, that's affecting the collective mind. If you're putting out the affirmations of that realization that you live and move and have your being in God, then that's lifting all of us up together.
And something I've been noticing too is, as I communicate more with the Holy Spirit, it's that the Holy Spirit more so wants us to give and receive love. And that's the only really true communication there is. So in terms of material things, it's like, that might be nice to sort of ease our ego minds. But if we're giving and receiving in love, then we're not going to be worrying about things like money or, having enough food or rent and stuff, because if we're really active and engaged in that exchange that God is having with us, then we don't need to worry about material things, I would say.
Well, that's true, but there's also the practical aspect of life itself. Jesus in the Beatitudes tells us not to give thought to, what we feed ourselves or what we clothe ourselves with, but to recognize that the Father in heaven provides everything that you need. Mm-hmm. And he places it in that concept of consider the lilies of the field, consider the birds. All of these parts of creation are clothed in splendor and have all of their daily needs met. Mm-hmm. And if we learn to live in that space, then we don't get trapped in the idea of lack, limitation, want, or need.
And so the idea is that the practicality will always be there when we're aligned with spirit, that it's not impractical, that it's not whimsical,
No, it's absolutely the most profoundly efficient way to live, because then there's no self-aggrandizement. Then there's no need to become a billionaire, because you know, billionaires are not really all that happy. Most of them are billions, and that makes you kind of miserable or obsessed and in a state of disconnect, always feeling thirst, but never being able to find the source to drink and the fullness of life itself.
Mm. And then there are some more lines for this lesson. It says, "To give and to receive are one in truth. I will receive what I am giving now." And then it says, "Then close your eyes and for 5 minutes think of what you would hold out to everyone to have it yours. You might, for instance, say, 'To everyone I offer quietness. To everyone I offer peace of mind. To everyone I offer gentleness.'"
And that, once again, puts a little bit of a highlight on the rebound effect. So if you're screaming at the guy who cut you off in traffic, you're giving that to yourself also. So you really have to become self-aware and look at what your constant thinking is doing. Are you bringing prosperity, love, gentleness, and beauty into the lives of others? Because that'll show up in your life. If you're, you know, on a rant and experiencing road rage, well, that's probably going to creep up on you in exactly the format that you dished it out with.
Mm-hmm. Does this work with material things as well? Can someone give their candy away and expect to receive some more?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I have seen it over and over again. But again, it's in that idea of living in an absolute state of faith. You know, you have to believe what you're aspiring to. And if you have doubt, then you bog the process down. The more you believe, the more you see instant manifestation. Because that really is what the whole journey is about, is recognizing that level of what some people call instant karma.
Very interesting. Do you want to take this next lesson?
Yes, this is a good one. This is another one of those that brings us back to being at a state of peace. Lesson number 109, I rest in God. We ask for rest today and quietness, unshaken by the world's appearances. We ask for peace and stillness in the midst of all the turmoil born of clashing dreams. We ask for safety and for happiness, although we seem to look on danger and on sorrow. And we have the thought that will answer our asking with what we request. I rest in God. This thought will bring to you the rest and quiet, peace and stillness, and the safety and happiness you seek. So here it is. That's just what we were talking about. As you are putting this thought into motion, that motion will provide you with the resources that you need to reside in a state of peace. So this is not airy-fairy stuff. This is not fantasy, go on a lark kind of input. This is very practical and real, and very much a way of learning how to live without effort. And that really is the whole point of life, is for it to be effortless. I mean, if you're constantly struggling, then you don't have time to enjoy life. You're always climbing the mountain and pushing the boulder up to the top. But if you're living in that state of peace, then effort becomes a non sequitur. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I really appreciate what you were saying before about how efficient and practical spirit is, even appearing in the world, and saying I rest in God, to me, is the most grounding, the most centering thing that we can offer ourselves, even while appearing in the world, even while participating in the world.
Absolutely, yeah. And Jesus was, quite brilliant at living these principles. If you look at some of the stories from his life, at one point the tax collector shows up, and one of the disciples who was holding on to the purse string says, well, what do I do, Jesus? Do we give the tax collector money for this? Because then we won't have money for that. And Jesus picks up a fish, and he pulls a coin out of the fish's mouth and says, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. So, that process, I mean, that may be a somewhat flowery description of the actual events as they occurred, but the reality is that it becomes as miraculous appearing, but in actual fact, it's just being seated and grounded in truth and knowing that you have all the resources you need.
Yeah, it seems to be like just like such a sense of joy by opening into all of this truth. And that's the thing that really like strikes me the most, is just how we were talking before we started recording, and you're talking about laughter and how it really loosens up any sort of circumstance you're in, or nearly any circumstance you're in at least. And, just how joy can really just like move that energy into a state of lightheartedness and not taking everything so seriously. And I just feel that appreciation for all of the spiritual wisdom that we're uncovering, the joy that it invokes.
Yeah, and the beauty of it is, the Course gives us all of this information in one volume, but nothing here that we're exploring is new. You go back and read things from St. John of the Cross and Meister Eckhart and Paramahansa Yogananda, and some of the great Sufi masters, some of the Hindu masters, a lot of Buddhist principle. All of this stuff has been around, but the Course has assembled everything and given us an applicable sort of an agenda to work with. So it's no longer digging through these libraries from the past, hoping to find this little nugget of insight. And the beauty of the Course is it's all condensed into one volume.
Absolutely. So here we move on to lesson 110, which feels very similar to the last lesson. It says, I am as God created me. We will repeat today's idea from time to time, for this one thought would be enough to save you and the world, if you believe that it is true. Its truth would mean that you have made no changes in yourself which have reality, nor changed the universe so that what God created was replaced by fear and evil, misery and death. So we're here, I feel like this is like it just admitting that whatever we made from that standpoint of the ego never really had reality to begin with, that I am still as God created me. It's returning us back to that original state of being.
Yeah, and most importantly is the recognition that we are the child of God. This reinforces that idea once again. This is a thought that shows up in the Course a lot. I am as God created me. I am not a body. I am free. I am as God created me. So we have this theme being repeated over and over again because we doubt our sacredness. We doubt that we are the child of God. We have taken the idea of the mud man, of the secondary God who creates a body made out of the dust of the earth and spits on it. Now, that's kind of a disgusting thought, really, when you start thinking about it. You got spit and dirt, and that's what you're composed of. Then it's a matter of deciding what is truth. And for you, that's, a very personal thing. That's up to you. But I would rather be as God created me, God's perfect child that lives in a state of grace, rather than a darker identity, which is very, very fragile, a very fragile creature that is vulnerable to microcosmic elements like germs and viruses and bed bugs and all those other things.
Yeah, make sure you wash your hands always. And another interesting thought there that comes from that same idea of the mudman is that the rib being used to create Eve, or the counterpart in the female form, which is sometimes even when you think about that, it's even a more vulnerable thing.
Yes, that is definitely that spikes a lot of angst and anger from women.
Mm-hmm.
It puts them in a role that is very submissive and diminishing, and creates more and more of the chaos that we do love to engender.
And then here's a couple, we're just our 5-minute practice period for this. It says, I am as God created me. His son can suffer nothing, and I am his son. And it says, then with this statement firmly in your mind, try to discover in your mind this self who is the Holy Son of God himself.
Yes, and not the mudman that we frequently embrace, only to find that it betrays us.
Absolutely. And we have 2 lessons left. We're going to skip past the reviews.
So we're up to lesson 121, which is a really powerful thought. Once again, we have heard these ideas, but we're repeating them so that we become more able to embrace these thoughts of an identity that is omnipotent, that is not limited by the fleshly identity that we have created. And it says in lesson 121, forgiveness is the key to happiness. Here is the answer to your search for peace. Here is the key to meaning in a world that seems to make no sense. And boy, has this year ever presented us with that one. Here is the way to safety in apparent dangers that appear to threaten you at every turn and bring uncertainty to all your hopes of ever finding quietness and peace. Here are all questions answered. Here the end of all uncertainty ensured at last. The unforgiving mind is full of fear and offers love no room to be itself, no place where it can spread its wings in peace and soar above the turmoil of the world. So again, it helps us to recognize that all of this is looped into the fact that there is only one of us. And even though we appear to be a multitude, the truth is God creates in all dimensions, in all directions, throughout eternity. So there is an eternity of us within the oneness of us. That's kind of a brain-numbing concept here when you start to really look at it. But when you look at it in depth, you begin to realize that what blesses one of us blesses all of us. Then we realize that if we can forgive the appearance of somebody else doing something wrong in the world, then that forgiveness loops back into whatever it is that we appear to be doing wrong in the world. So then forgiveness becomes our most powerful tool.
Yeah, absolutely. Something that actually came to mind when you talk about dimensions is there's this idea out there that that we've been living in a 3D world and we're moving into a 5D world, or all these ideas. And what always comes to my mind when I see that is that, there's only really that one space where God is, and everything else is unreal. So the idea of like dividing up different dimensions seems like dividing up all these different quadrants. And, I always just thought, isn't it always right here, right now? I mean, we don't really need to move to a 5D world or transport ourselves there in any way, because all of it's right here, right now, for us to have access to it. And God has denied us nothing.
Well, yes, and it also puts a highlight on the idea that the abstract nature of God is what we share with God. So when you're trying to break apart everything and fractionate reality, then you create this linear experience where everything is broken and there is no way to resolve that idea of separation. So the more we fractionate, the more we chop things up, the more we complicate the journey. So again, it's really is the beauty of truth is that truth is very simple. It doesn't need any kind of complexity. And the more you see people creating complexity, the more you probably want to question, is this something that is meaningful for me, or is this just going to create more of a maze for me to spend time in and to not find the peace and the sense of security and enrichment that I'm seeking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I've noticed that going along this journey and surrendering up to the Spirit more and more, that I feel like I've been called to relinquish a lot of things, or at least relinquish them as I hold them. Things like, things that divide things up, like personalities, for one instance, and astrology, numerology, lots of ologies, lots of studies that are based in the world of perception that don't really hold real validity to them.
Exactly. Yeah, if instead of seeing Scorpios and Pisces and Leos and whatevers, if we can see Jesus in everybody that we encounter, wow, that kind of levels the ground.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of brings us back to a level of truth that is astonishing, because then we're no longer seeing, again, the fractionated individual. So it's all a matter of what you really want, because the Course gives you something that is immensely powerful and valuable beyond any concept of value. And do you want that, or do you want to continue to pursue these little chunks of reality and continue to put together a puzzle that is never ending? Because as you're assembling one side of it, it's disintegrating on the other side.
Mm-hmm. And the last line that's in this workbook lesson says, "Every hour tell yourself, forgiveness is the key to happiness. I will awaken from the dream that I am mortal, fallible, and full of sin, and know I am the perfect Son of God." So that nicely wraps up that lesson.
Yes, that leaves us with, again, a very empowering idea, or set of ideas. And these are not things we have to struggle to achieve. These are things that are our inherent nature, but that we have obscurificated with all of our silliness.
We're good at that. And I'll read off the final lesson for today, this week. It's lesson 122. Forgiveness offers everything I want. What could you want forgiveness cannot give? Do you want peace? Forgiveness offers it. Do you want happiness, a quiet mind, a certainty of purpose, and a sense of worth and beauty that transcends the world? Do you want care and safety, and the warmth of sure protection always? Do you want a quietness that cannot be disturbed, a gentleness that never can hurt, or never can be hurt, a deep, abiding comfort, and a rest so perfect it can never be upset? All this forgiveness offers you and more.
So that's basically a synopsis of everything we've been talking about in our journey through the Course lessons. It's the practical aspect of living the Course means that your needs are met because you have come to understand that your needs are met, and living in that state of divine grace where there where you're stepping away more and more each day from all of the struggle that this idea of being separate from God presents to us.
Yeah, I just really love this passage. I'm going to go ahead and keep reading. It says, "It sparkles in your eyes as you awake and gives you joy with which to meet the day. It soothes your forehead while you sleep and rests upon your eyelids so you see no dreams of fear and evil, malice and and when you wake again, it offers you another day of happiness and peace. All this forgiveness offers you and more."
And it is complete. There is nothing left out. It's not like you have to go shopping and find all these different resources and all these different things to fill your needs. It all comes in one package. Santa Claus actually doesn't even have to be the intermediary. So you don't have to wait for it to come down the chimney for you. It is always right there inside you.
Yeah, and I think it's important to notice in this lesson, Jesus starts 3 paragraphs with, "Here is the answer," with an exclamation mark after it. So it's like, look here, it's very important. This is a very important lesson.
Yes, and going down to section 8 here, it says, "Open your eyes today and look upon a happy world of safety and of peace. Forgiveness is a means by which it comes to take a place of hell. In quietness, it rises up to greet your open eyes and fill your heart with deep tranquility as ancient truths, forever newly born, arise in your awareness." So it does offer us an actual resolution to what the world appears to be. And as we step more and more in that direction, we're less and less affected by external circumstance.
Absolutely. And here is the last line for this lesson. It says, "Remind yourself how precious are these gifts with this reminder, which has power to hold your gifts in your awareness through the day. Forgiveness offers everything I want. Today I have accepted this as true. Today I have received the gifts of God." Is there anything you wanted to add before we wrap up, Chris?
No, I think that pretty much is it. That reinforces the idea and gives us that option of holding that as our truth. And the rest is up to you.
To accept forgiveness and the atonement for ourselves.
Exactly.
Well, we'll go ahead and continue next week then with our next 7 lessons. And everyone, please feel free to like, share, comment, or ask questions if you have any, and let us know how your experience of A Course in Miracles is going if you're following along.
Absolutely, yes. We're always wanting to share our personal journeys so that we can affirm that all of us are on the way home, which is a beautiful thing.
Absolutely. Well, I'll let you go get ready for your interview. If you want to mention something about that again, you can too.
Yes, once again, I'll be on Om Times Radio in about 15 minutes. So if you check out my Facebook page, you can find the link. And I would say get out there and rock and roll, everybody, because things are going to start speeding up.
Absolutely. Well, it was great talking to you, Chris, and we'll talk next week, Ben.
Yes, you have a great week.
All right, you too. Bye.
Bye.